What made you lose respect for someone? Alcohol. Went hiking with this guy I thought was cool. While we were hiking in middle nature he stops for a cigarette break. No big deal, I could use a breather myself. He then finished his cigarette and just threw the butt on the ground and walked off. Couldn't be friends with someone that just blatantly litters on hiking trails. I just kept creating excuses to not hang out with him after that till he stopped inviting me out. They put lives and future of others that trusted them in jeopardy. When my mental abuser started acting arrogantly because she knew nobody was ever gonna check her over what she did to me, because they don't want to get involved. She basically got away with being a shit human being. My respect for them was already plummeting, but it fell into a pit after that. I remain angry and bitter about it. Still looking for therapy. Smoking. How people have behaved during the pandemic. I learned that my almost business partner was a Holocaust denier. We were supposed to go 50-50 to buy out our boss who was retiring. After learning this, I told my boss I'd only do it for a 60-40 split. I had the money, he did not. The denier refused, so I bought it outright at 100% and squeezed him out. I'm glad I did. I still think about it sometimes and it disgusts me. I wouldn't have been able to get over it. I went for my first motorcycle ride over a week ago. I have no experience and don't really know what I'm doing. My dad decided that instead of teaching me anything that he was just going to tell me every biker death he knew about. He used to ride BTW. I left and got the bike to the place I'm staying, in one piece, and I only dropped it once. He shows up today, about 12 days later. He doesn't ask me about it but instead throws a prepaid phone card at me and tells me to refill his account. Then he decides to lecture me about how my pants are too tight and that I won't be able to move around on the bike. He just wanted to pick at me about my weight like he has since I dropped out the womb, so I flip out and hit him with the old "you mean to tell you you're gonna try to act like any kind of a parent now? And of all the things you could have taught me, this is the thing you're gonna throw at me? You didn't check in on me, but you can come around when you want something? Nah, get out." And he got pissed and stomped out of my house. After today I'm not playing these games with him anymore. Befriended me on my first day of school only to start bullshitting me with his attitude for no reason a few weeks later. I live across the country from my family. A couple years ago I was invited to the wedding of my mom's, now ex-boyfriend's daughter. She talked to me to make sure I was going to be there and I told her I wouldn't miss it. Many hours of driving and multiple hundreds of dollars for a ticket later, I make it to the wedding where she proceeds to say maybe 2 words to me the entire time. So frustrating. My teacher did nothing about my classmates' talk about hentai. Yes, hentai. They're 12-13 and were talking and laughing about it in front of him and he was just there quiet with a nervous stupid smile. I had a lot of respect for my sister. She's a single mom and she was kicking ass. Recently she tried to blackmail me about something I didn't even care about, and lied saying I assaulted her when I had a recording of the entire encounter showing otherwise. Needless to say, she's lost the respect of both me and the entire family. Whenever anyone speaks Karenese. When another team was getting a new co-worker, my manager couldn't pronounce their name after a couple of tries and said why can't they have a normal name like everyone else. Also same manager, couldn't respect how another person liked to be called and resisted explanations to help them understand. Same person also complained about other racially biased stuff. Yet recently said they wanted to do a cultural/diversity sensitivity course, hope it helps them. I lost all respect for my grandpa when I found out he had been awfully abusive to their oldest child, my aunt. He was extremely ambitious through her, so he was incredibly hard on her, like literally child abuse by today's standards. Of course he absolutely didn't think like that back then. He'd calmed down by the time their other children were born. All of them still have lifelong psychological issues too. Let's just say my grandparents weren't the world's greatest parents. But the oldest got the worst of it. All the relationships with her had always been complicated to say the least. Now they're basically non-existent. Sadly, she doesn't speak to any of us anymore. I always thought it was just her. I'm much more sympathetic now that I know what she'd been through. It sucks that she's deep in denial and entirely refuses any kind of help/treatment too. I honestly see it as a kind of miracle that all their other kids, my mum and her other sister and brother, turned out so well, all things considered, and built such loving, healthy families. All of them are truly amazing people. If all the information made me lose respect for my grandpa, it also made me gain a huge amount of it for my other relatives. I'm so lucky. My best friend's brother was arrested for child pornography and the rape of a 13-year-old, and she hired an attorney for him. Later, she said if she knew he was going to have to go to prison, he got 23 years, thankfully, she would have put him on a plane to South America to have him hide from the charges. A common customer often fakes being blind and intentionally moves in the direction of incoming women with a searching hand out to accidentally grope them. Then laughs it off. I'm blind, sorry. I thought it wasn't true till I saw an 8-person wife haul and he moved 6 spaces to the side when it was just him and 2 women. Literally anyone who's a suck up. My mom tried to turn me against my dad and his side when she was divorcing my dad. She made up vague lies like he was a bad person and that my uncle was a misogynist. Yeah, he used the oil pastels I gave him for Christmas to make his own version of a picture I drew and is very encouraging of my art, so it wasn't hard to figure out she was bullshitting. She also tried to make her issues with her side of the family my problem. I barely know anyone on her side and I can count the times I've met them on one hand. I don't know what she was trying to accomplish, but I have barely spoken to her since I moved to another state and I will eat my own hands before visiting. I only ever respond to her air messages on holidays. I don't know how accurate some of the stuff that she said about her sisters is. Dad says they hate each other because of stupid reasons, but I want no part of that toxic cesspit. When I was at 7th grade I usually make friends with smart people and most of them in my class were girls. One was a good one who I actually got along with and one was the one I lost respect to. One day she asked all of her friends to hang out at a resort. Half of her friends accepted and half didn't, including me because we already went to a horror booth last week and I ain't got no money. She got upset about it and got mad at me and ignored me for the rest of the day, but she didn't get mad at the other half of her friends. WHO disagree. Next day they decided to turn their weekend getaway to buy some materials for our project. Most of them didn't get an item that our teacher requested, but I did. When I got into class the next day she asked me where did I bought that item and I went, person shrugging. After that she was confused as to why I'm ignoring her. Our next subject was math, and as she saw our teacher about to enter our class she asked, "Are there any summative tests today, ma'am?" Our teacher nodded and said yes. She was shocked after hearing it and looked at me and called my name. She then got close to me and apologized and asked, "Why were you ignoring us?" At that point I knew she only apologized so she could get help from me. Now that a test is held I also don't know why my only other best friend can't see that she had such attitude. As I was minding my own test she asked a couple question even though the teacher was right in front of her. How bold. I even asked her a question in return, but the answer she gave was incorrect. After checking, the teacher announced who got the highest and she proudly sent her paper and the rest of her gang friends were clapping and admiring her. As for me, the one who checked my papers was having problems cause he checked multiple papers, so I decided to check my own paper and surprised I got higher score than her. She was late, then shocked, and when the teacher was gone she smacked me with a book and asked, "How come you got a higher score than me?" I ignored her after that higher score. We caught him trying to take advantage of someone who was under the influence. He's no longer welcome. The moment he sexually harassed 3 women. Learning they don't walk their dogs. Cheating. Lying about being married. After I asked 3 times. I lost respect for my mother when she told me that I needed to stop playing the victim when I told her about my anxiety and depression. I saw John Oliver video on the USA riots that occurred during the protests last summer. He used footage of interviews justifying the damage and possible loss of life by quoting a really awful sentence from Trevor Noah. I completely lost respect for his journalism and haven't watched any new of his videos. Sister's boyfriend entered my room unannounced and woke me up and my GF up at 1 AM saying we need to talk. Brought me to the bathroom where him and my sister told me I need to clean up around the apt more. I pay all the bills though and the apt is under our mother's name. Also, I barely leave my room as is. Never felt so disrespected and lost mad respect for them both. With